Hello viewers, this is the part 4 of the series named Mastering OEM that covers everything you need to know about Oracle Enterprise Manager or OEM to be able to administer it at its best. In the last couple of tutorials, we created the 64-bit Oracle Linux 7.9 virtual server, installed Oracle 19c software, and created the Oracle 19c database for the OEM repository. And also, we downloaded the OEM 13.5 software from Oracle Corporation. If you have not watched the previous tutorials in this series, I suggest you watch them first so you get a better understanding on today's tutorial. In today's tutorial, we will actually install the OEM 13.5 software on our Linux 7.9 virtual machine. Before we start installation, let's validate a few prerequisites. You will be able to find all these commands that I am using here in the description of this video below. The complete list of prerequisites can be found through the link I have given in the description of this video below. As our repo database is a fresh one created in Oracle Enterprise Edition 19.3, many of the prerequisites have been already fulfilled. So these are existence of the glibc packages in the server, DNS server is resolving the OMS or OEM server name, kernel parameters, file max is set to 65,536, ensure installation file system has at least 40 gigs of free space, make sure the temp file system has at least 14 gigs of free space, Oracle users soft limit for the number of files is 30,000, make sure that the default profile doesn't have any password verify function, ensure session cached cursors is at least 300 in repository database, ensure system undo and temp table spaces data files are auto-extensible, take a backup of the Oracle inventory, take a full backup of the repository database or create a granted restore point, disable any logon triggers in the repository database, ensure that the class path environment variable is unset. Now let's verify all of these prerequisites in the server with commands. I have established two SSH sessions to the server named admin server, the first one as root user and the second one with our Oracle user. So in the root session, I will validate the existence of the glibc packages using rpm-qa command, and to save time, I just copying and pasting the commands from the text editor that I have. Again, you will be able to copy these commands from the text document in my Google Drive, for which the link I have given in the description of this video below. Using rpm-qa command, I can see that the glibc packages are installed. If any of these packages are missing, then we'll be able to install them using the yum command, which also I am giving in the shared text document. Next, we need to validate whether the DNS server or the domain name system server is resolving the name of this OEM or OMS server or not using the nslookup command. So nslookup admin server, and we can see that the fully qualified name has been returned by the DNS server along with its IP address. So it is resolved. You can skip configuring a DNS or domain name system server, but because of the convenience of having it, I suggest you go for it. It's very easy and takes just a couple of minutes to set it up. I have a separate video on how to configure a DNS server in your virtual learning environment, and the link to that video is given in the description of this video below. You will also be able to use it when you will create a virtual Oracle RAC or real application cluster database later on. Next, we'll validate the kernel parameter file max. To do that, we will do sysctl-a command and we'll grab the output fs.filemax, and we can see that the file max value is at 6 million, which is far more than 65,000. So we are good in terms of this value. Next, we will see whether the temp file system has at least 14 gigs of free space or not. And to do that, we will just do a df-h and grab the output, and we can see that the temp file system has around 10 gigs free space, which is less than the required amount of free space, and we have to adjust it accordingly. And to do that, we will make a directory as the name temp2, and we just made the directory under the root file system, because we know that the root file system has enough free space. Just to validate one more time, we see that the root file system has around 35 gigs of free space. So we are safe to create another directory named temp2, which we'll be using as our temp file system. Now we have to make the Oracle user as the owner of this. So chown -r, which is recursive, and Oracle oinstall is the user and group for the temp2 folder. Now we'll see whether the installation file system has enough free space or not. And we know that the U001 is our installation file system for OEM, and we see that, let's do it the -h, and we see that the U001 has around 46 gigs free space, so we are good. Next, let's check whether Oracle user soft limit for number of files, that is the soft no files, is 30,000. So we will do the change in the Oracle users limits. So we'll validate it through the @securitylimits.conf file and grab the output for Oracle user for soft no files. And we can see that it's 1024, which is quite low, and we have to adjust it accordingly. To make this change, we will edit the file, that is @securitylimits.conf, and we will go to the section where we are defining the limits for Oracle user, and under this we will edit the soft limit for number of files as 30,000 and save it. Next, we need to make sure that the default profile, which is there in the repository database, doesn't have any password verify function. To do that, we will go to the other session that we established using Oracle user, and we will connect to the database as sysdba, and we will execute this SQL query, select limit from DBA profiles where resource name equal to password verify function and profile equal to default, and we see that it's null, so we are good. Next, we adjust a few parameters to improve the performance of the database, that is the session cached cursors and the shared pool size. And for both of these parameters, we will set it through SP file so that the changes will take effect in the next reboot. And we set the session cached cursor to 300 and the shared pool size to 600 MB. Now we need to make sure that the system undo and temp tablespaces data files are auto-extensible. Using the query, we will see whether these tablespaces have at least one data file with auto-extend on, and we can see that all these tablespaces, including system, temp, and undo, we have at least one data file with auto-extensible on. So we are good. Next, we need to take a backup of the Oracle inventory. To do that, first we need to see where the inventory is located. Ideally, it's the file that is ora-inst.log, which will give us the path to the Ora inventory, and we'll just cat this file etc ora-inst.log, and where we can see that the inventory location is U001 app Ora inventory. So take this, clear the screen, go to this location, and we will go to the contents XML folder. There we see that the inventory XML file is there, and we will make a copy of this file as _back. Next, we need to take a full backup or create a guaranteed restore point of the repository database. It's always a good idea to take a full backup of the database or create a guaranteed restore point before the installation, because in case of anything goes wrong during the installation, we can restore the database before restarting the installation again. But our environment, being a virtual environment, we don't have to do that. Instead, we will take a snapshot of the virtual machine so that we can restore it as a whole in case we need to do that. Next, we'll disable any logon triggers in the repository database. So first, let's connect to the database using sysdba and see if there is any logon triggers enabled, and currently, yes, there is one logon trigger which is enabled. I checked it using the query select count trigger name from sysdba triggers, where triggering event like logoff or triggering event like logon, and status equals to enabled. Now let's find out who is the owner of this trigger, and we can see that this is the GSM admin internal. So let's disable this using alter trigger GSM admin internal.gsm logoff disable, and the trigger is disabled. We will enable it once our OEM installation is complete. Next, we need to find out whether the class path environment variable is set. We will go back to the shell, and using echo command, we'll see whether the class path environment variable is set. So it returned blank, means it is not set, and we are good. Now we have completed verification of the most prominent prerequisites. Please note that if we still do not meet any requirements, the OEM installer will anyway report us where it is missing something, and we will get a chance to fix that. If you see, I did not bounce the database for the initialization parameter change that I made with scope equals to SP file to take effect. If you want, you can still bounce the database now, but the reason I did not do that is to show you how the installer auto-fix option works later on. Now we will start installation of the OEM 13.5 software on our virtual Linux 7.9 server. I have established two sessions from my Windows host to the server, and these sessions are one using the root user and the other using Oracle user. And the Windows host from where I have established these two sessions has an IP address of 192.168.155. This IP address will be used to access the graphical user interface of the installer. Let's do a df-h to find out the file systems one more time. This U001 is the file system where we are going to install the OEM software. Now let's create three directories which will be used for the middleware home, enterprise manager software library, and the OEM agent for its base directory. Let's clear it. And these three directories will be the U001 APV Oracle EM13.5 MW home, same Oracle base, under that it's EM software library, and same Oracle base, under that it's agent 13C. Now let's go to the location or the directory where we have downloaded our OEM software, and that is vbox sf2 directory. And under this we have this subdirectory OEM 13.5 Linux 64, which has the installer files. And out of these 5 files, we are going to use this .bin file to start our installer. Before I start the installer program, I will create one snapshot of the virtual machine so that in case something goes wrong, I'll be able to restore the virtual machine to its original state. To do that, I will go to the virtual machine console, click on our virtual server, and click on the take a snapshot button, and I'll put a description just like before: installing OEM 13.5. It will take a couple of seconds to complete the snapshot, and our snapshot tree is taken. Next, we'll export the display variable, and we'll set the IP address of this Windows host from where we established this SSH session, which is 192.168.1.55. So 192.168.1.55:0.0 is the terminal number. And next, we are going to use the command. We are calling the .bin file of the installer, and we are putting an additional parameter -j-djava.io.temp directory equals to temp2. So this additional parameter we are specifying to let the installer know that we are not using the traditional temp directory because it doesn't have enough space that is required by the installer, and instead we are using this temp2 directory that we created a few minutes back. And next, we'll hit enter, and it is going to bring up the graphical user interface of the OEM 13.5 installer. This usually takes a minute or so to bring up the graphical user interface. of the installer depending on the performance of the server, because it needs to unzip the installer before bringing up the GUI. And the GUI has come up. In the first screen, we will select the create a new enterprise manager system, and we'll select the simple install, which is selected by default. Click next. We'll skip any updates here. Click next. Next, it will check the prerequisites one more time, and it will let us know in case anything failed. And we can see that there are two warnings, and the first warning is related to some packages missing, and we can see which package is missed here. Yes, this is the glibc devel, which is not found. And next, there is a kernel parameter which is not having the required values here. Now, if we see that the glibc package that it is reporting as missing can be ignored because we have already installed all the required glibc packages. Secondly, if we see the required kernel parameters, which is asking for a range of 11,000 to 65,000, in fact we have a range from 9,000 to 65,500, which is more than the required range. So in fact we can also ignore this warning. So we will ignore these two warnings, and then we'll click next. Next, we will select the middleware home directory. So we created this directory already, which is under U001 app Oracle EM 13.5 middleware home. Next, the agent base directory. We'll click on U001 app Oracle agent 13c, which is the agent base directory, and the host name of the server or the host is taken automatically, the host name and the domain that we specified while building this virtual machine. Click next. Create an admin password and confirm the admin password. We will set a simple password here so that we can remember it for now. Later on we can change it, and this is nothing but the password for the sysman user. Please note that the sysman user is the OEM repository owner and the super user for the OEM system. And this is going to be, say, sysman 12345 sysman 12345 for now. Now the database hostname, the server where we are installing OEM software also hosts the database instance that is going to be our OEM repository. So the name of this host is admin sbr.oraexpert.org. Port is 1522. SID is OEM repo, and the sys password, if you remember, we use the sys password as OEM repo for this database, which is the same as the name of the database. And then we click next, and it will validate all the information that we supplied. In the next screen, it is giving a few warnings, and also in a few places it failed. So what are those things? First one, session cached cursors instance parameter has a warning. So it should be set to a very high value between 200 and 500, and the shared pool size should be also at least set to 450 MB. If you remember, these two parameters we changed before, but as we did not bounce the database, the changes are still in SP file and not in the instance level. Anyway, we will change these two parameters again as suggested by the OEM installer. And the parameter allow insert with update check is true. In our case, it is false. And the CBO stage gathering job should be disabled. Then the parallel max servers will be temporarily set to a lower value, and the min server parameter will be set to 0. We will click on this auto fix button, and the installer will take care of this for us. Now we can see that the session cached cursor and the pool size and the third parameter that allow insert with update check were not fixed. because that needs a bounce of the database for these changes to take effect. As for this tree, we can see that the correction type is manual. So we are going to fix them manually. Then we will come back to this screen again. So we'll go to our other session that we established using the root user. Then do a sudo su-oracle, and then we will connect to the database as sysdba. Then we will change the session cast cursor to 500 first. Alter system set session cast cursors equals to 500, scope equal to sp file. Next, we will set the shared pool size to 450 MB. 450 M, scope sp file. And lastly, we will set the allow insert with update check to true. And then we will bounce the database. So all our changes are done and the database is also bounced. Now we go back to our installer screen and we click on the check again button. And this time we can see that all the prerequisites and the checks are passed. Then click next. Oracle strongly recommends using AL32 UTF-8 character set for EM repository, which we already established while creating the database. So we are good. Then the software library location. So by default it is taking a directory inside the EM13.5 folder, but we want to keep this software library outside of the Enterprise Manager base directory. The reason is, if going forward we upgrade the OEM system in this server and later on we uninstall or delete the old version of the OEM software, that will also cause deletion of this software library, and we want to avoid that. So that's the reason we are going to use the software library as a directory that we created specifically for that. So if you remember, we created 3 directories, and one of those 3 directories is this one, EM software lib, and we are going to use this. Click next, and this is a summary of all the options that we selected so far. Next, we will click install. Depending on the performance of this server, this installation can take up to 1 or 2 hours. When the installation is going on, you can also see the progress in the screen behind the GUI, and also you can click on this view log button or the link, and you can see additional information in detail in this window. So I'll pause the recording when the installation is in progress, and I'll come back when there is something significant to mention. And now the installation is 100%, and we need to run the root script to complete it. We'll copy the root script along with the path and go to the session that we established with the root user and run it. And the root script has been successfully completed. Next, click OK. And the finished screen is giving some vital information about the installation just completed. We'll just make a copy of this information and paste it in a notepad, and we'll save it for any future reference. And we'll click on the close button. Now we need to verify a couple of things. First of all, we'll go back and the session that we established with the Oracle user, and we will go to the installation directory, that is U001 app Oracle EM13.5, then the middleware home, then bin directory. And in this bin directory, we will run our first command, emctl status OMS, to see if all the components of the OMS are up. And we can see that the web tier is up, Oracle Management Server is up, and JVMD engine is up. These are the three main components of OMS, and if these are up, it means our OEM system is up. Now, using the same command but with the details parameter, we will see all the details about this OMS. It will ask for the sysman password, and the sysman password that we set was sysman12345. And this detailed page about the status of the OEM has given us a lot of useful information, including the console server port, HTTP console port, HTTPS console port, upload port, etc. and also the console URL and the upload URL. So this console URL is the one using which we will be able to access our OEM system from a browser. Now we'll take this URL and we will try to access it through a browser, which will be our final step of validation in today's tutorial. But before we go and paste this URL into a browser, we have to make sure that this fully qualified name is actually resolved to an IP address. So this admin server.oraexpert.org is the fully qualified name, host name of the OMS host, but this name is not known to our Windows host because the DNS server belongs to only our virtual network. So we have to make an entry in the Windows host file to let the Windows know that what IP address this particular fully qualified name resolves to. Open the file explorer, go to System, C drive, Windows, then System32 directory, and from there we have to go to the drivers directory, and under drivers directory it's etc directory, and under that we will be able to see there is a file called hosts. So this file we have to open as administrator, and we'll run this notepad program as an administrator, and we'll simply copy this path, open, go to this location, open this host file, and we'll make an entry for our new OMS server, which is 192.168.1.67 is the IP address, and admin server, that is admin svr.oraexpert.org is the fully qualified name of the server, and again the short name of the server. So this is the IP address, then the fully qualified name and the short name, and we will save this file. Now the name of the OMS host is known to our Windows system. Now we can copy the console URL and we'll go to a browser, paste the URL, then proceed with the unsafe option because we know there is no threat, and we will provide the sysman password here, sysman12345, and when we log into the console for the first time, it will ask for the license agreement. We will click on I accept button, and we have to select a home page for our OEM system. This is user specific. I usually prefer to select this summary page. You can select another one of your choice, but for now let's select this summary page and click the next button. You can change this selection later on also, and here we go. So we are at the home page that gives us the summary of our OMS or OEM system, and we have successfully installed OEM 13.5 in our Linux 7.9 virtual server. And with this I am concluding today's part. In the next part we will start installing agents, and we'll also discover targets, and also we'll configure incident rules and monitoring template, etc. So viewers, I hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful. Please hit the like button if you liked it and subscribe to my channel so you won't miss an episode in this series for the Oracle DBAs or similar educational videos that I am uploading every week.